Hello and welcome to another edition of the College Sports Forum here on YouTube or wherever you're listening, whether that be YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, or wherever I decide to post this video at. Wherever you decide to partake of this, I thank you for joining us today on this rainy, snowy, cold Monday afternoon here in Knoxville, Tennessee. We got a lot to get into. Brackets were released yesterday. As it's Monday, brackets were released on Sunday night. There are several matchups that immediately caught my eye. We'll get into that later, but as of right now, we got a TikTok that's popping off. Y'all seem to enjoy that. Our Cinderella's Dead TikTok I put out. We are also on Twitter. We're on Instagram as well. If y'all would be so kind as to go follow over there as well. So, with all that being said, today we're going to do an overview of the seeding, what stood out, what surprised me, what passed looked interesting. Then we'll get into some more minute details as far as matchups go, and we'll have a separate video for some of the most interesting first round matchups. We won't go into too much detail as far as individual matchups go, but I will point out some interesting upset possibilities. Even though, as I said earlier in the week, I expect chalk in this tournament, I do still see some upset possibilities, and we'll get into that. We'll get into all that on this Monday afternoon edition, or Monday night edition, I should say, of the College Sports Forum. So let's go ahead and get an overview of the seeding and where teams ended up, and then we'll have a look at each region and give a little brief overview of what I think. First of all, Duke is your number one overall seed in this year's NCAA tournament. I thought there was a slight chance to give Arizona the number one overall seed, but of course Duke was given it as expected. However, I figured there was a slight chance Arizona might edge them out given their victory over in the Big 12 tournament. They beat Houston in the title game for that tournament. So I figured Arizona might have done enough to get that number one overall seed, especially given the status of Caleb Foster, but in the end, Duke got it, and in the end, we'll play the games and see who ends up deserving or who ends up winning the whole thing. I think Arizona, Duke, Michigan, a lot of these teams have shots. So again, we'll get into that in more detail later. But second's Florida. Florida's given that last number one overall seed. This was something I was watching for. I was thinking they might give it to Houston. Again, given their performance in the Big 12 tournament, getting to the conference game, and another aspect of that Florida lost in the semifinals of their conference tournament. Didn't even reach the championship game, so I figured that might be enough there to get them onto that last one line, but it wasn't. And then again, just comparing resumes here with these teams, Houston has 2 more wins than Florida. Both teams really lack any signature wins. Florida's most impressive win is a pretty big win over Bama. Houston's is either Texas Tech or Kansas. It just depends on which one you value more there. Personally, I would have given it to Houston, given they have 2 more wins, and I think the Big 12 is a little bit stronger than the SEC this year. But I don't get to decide these things, and they're in the same region, so we'll see how that plays out if and when they potentially meet. Another thing I was looking for was how they view Michigan State, given their early exit in the Big Ten tournament, and that loss to UCLA did end up bumping them off the 2 line to the 3 line. There's not a big difference between 2 and 3 in my mind, but it does matter for which region they play in. So they got placed in the East as the 3 seed in the East because they are that number 1 overall 3 seed. So instead of being the first 2 seed, instead of being the last 2 seed, or the first 3 seed. Purdue got that last 2 seed in the West. Because now if they beat UConn, now if they win, they got to beat UConn instead of Gonzaga, like Purdue does, which I think is a far worse draw. I'd rather play Gonzaga than I would play UConn. But then again, Purdue's over there with Arizona as their 1 seed. So again, with the stuff going on with Duke, I think I'd rather have Duke as my 1 seed instead of Arizona. Again, like I said, especially with Caleb Foster not being available. Now, earlier in the week, I said if Iowa State performs well in the Big 12 tournament, they could jump up to the 2 line. However, I didn't think they did enough to jump up to that 2 line. However, the committee did. So Iowa State's at 2. So jumping down a little further, CBS was so kind as to give us a full 1 through 68 itemized list of these teams, so we know exactly where these teams fit in the committee's mind. But again, jumping down a little further, you'll see some Big 12 teams like Texas Tech and BYU who suffered some injuries and closed out the season with several losses. So it'll be interesting to see how they perform, especially Texas Tech without JT Toppin. I'm really interested to see what Texas Tech does. They get matched up. If they win, they get to play Bama over there as if that 4-5 game happens. So we'll see exactly how Texas Tech is doing against some other competition without JT Toppin. That's kind of it as far as for what surprised me. I'm not really going to talk about last 4 in or bubble teams because I think those teams don't deserve to be talked about really. But I think if you're on the bubble, if you're like Auburn or in Oklahoma, I think you didn't do enough throughout the season, and there's really, you're not going to make a ton of noise in the tournament. You might win a couple games, but I'd rather sit here and talk about teams that can win the thing, not bubble teams that are going to lose in the first weekend. So let's get into the first region, which is the East. But first, again, as you guys see above me, my Twitter, my TikTok, I'd love for you guys to go hit me with a follow there. Don't leave yet; do it after the video. But I would love for you guys to go hit me with a follow there. I post TikToks frequently, so you guys can go look at those. But East region, let's get into the East region. So for these regions, I'm going to do my pick for who I think is going to win the region. Then I'm going to do a dark horse team that I think has a shot. So let's get into this here. First, let's go over some interesting seeds that ended up in this East region. Obviously, Duke's your 1 seed, UConn's your 2 seed, Michigan State's your 3 seed, Kansas is your 4 seed, St. John's is your 5 seed, and Louisville is your 6 seed. This is strong. This is a really strong region. You got UConn, Michigan State, Duke, St. John's, Kansas. Any one of these teams can make it out of this region. I do have Michigan State making it out of this region, though. Again, I'm putting a lot of weight on Caleb Foster potentially not being able to go here. I think that really limits a lot of what Duke wants to do. But, however, again, I do have Michigan State making it out of this region. As far as the dark horse for who I think could make it out of this region, St. John's. I think St. John's is really good. Rick Pitino over there, I really like what he's doing over in St. John's. So I think I do have St. John's getting that win over Kansas and getting to the Sweet 16. However, I do have them losing to Duke. However, I would not be surprised if St. John's takes down Duke and then goes on to take down Michigan State or UConn or whoever makes it over there to the Sweet 16, whether that be Louisville as well. I do think St. John's, can make it out of this region and get to the Final Four. However, I do have Michigan State as my pick. This is another team. This is another instance where I really like teams that didn't perform well in their conference tournaments. Michigan State lost in their first game they played against UCLA. So yeah, I highly value these elite level teams that didn't perform well in their conference tournaments. These teams typically do pretty well when it comes to the actual big dance. So yeah, some interesting matchups here. Nothing outstanding in the first round. The only thing that I really have here is I have UCF upsetting UCLA, which it's a 7-10 game. So if you want to call it an upset, you can. I don't particularly. Once you get out of 12-5, I don't really particularly call anything an upset. But yeah, that's really it as far as the first round goes. I do have St. John's over Kansas in the round of 32. But then I got chalk kind of the rest of the way. I got UConn over UCF, Michigan State beating Louisville, Duke beating TCU. So as far as the East region goes, I expect high seeds to roll here. Except for when we get to the Elite Eight. Again, I do have Michigan State taking down number 1 Duke in that region. So yeah, I mean that's kind of it as far as the East goes. Like I said, I'm gonna get into a lot of these matchups more in detail later in the week, probably tomorrow or Wednesday before the actual tournament gets underway. I'll go into some matchups, some individual matchups. I'll have their own separate videos on that. So if you want to watch those, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and you'll see all of those and be able to watch them before the tournament gets underway, so you know what to bet on and you know who to pick in your bracket. So let's move down to the Midwest a little bit. Let's see here. Let's get a good view of this. Your Midwest region, you're going to have Michigan as your 1 seed. So this is Michigan's region here. Michigan's a lot of people's national title pick, and I don't blame them for having Michigan as their national title pick. I think Michigan very easily, very, very easily here can get here and win it all. I think they're one of the, depending on what time of the season you're looking at, I think they're the best or one of the best teams in college basketball. I think this has been one of the bigger stories in college basketball this year has been Michigan, because I think my preseason poll, I have a video out of it on the channel. I think I had Michigan like 14 or 15 or something like that. So Michigan's really surprised a lot of people this year. You got Iowa State is your 2 seed, Virginia's your 3 seed, Alabama's your 4 seed, Texas Tech is your 5 seed, and you got Tennessee as your 6 seed. My Tennessee on the 6th line, this is the lowest seed Rick Barnes has ever had in the NCAA tournament, and it's not I say ours because I live in Knoxville, so this path for Tennessee is brutal. If you do get by Miami, Ohio, or SMU, whichever one of those teams we end up playing, those 2 teams play on Wednesday, so we'll see who we play then. But if we do end up getting by them, SMU's a 7 or 8.5 point favorite in that game also, so I don't imagine we'll be seeing much of Miami, Ohio, but depending on who we play, if we win that game, we're going to have to play Virginia. Very strong team. I'm scared of this Virginia team. I said before the brackets were revealed, I said I do not want to play Virginia. I feel bad for whoever has to end up playing Virginia. Then if we win that, we got to go on and beat Iowa State. If we beat Iowa State, we got to go on and beat Michigan. If we beat Michigan, we got to go on and play the winner of the West, which is probably Arizona. So this draw for Tennessee is not very good. The first matchup that sticks out to me here is St. Louis and Georgia. I really like this St. Louis team. I think this Georgia team's a little overvalued here. They got Blue Kane, he's a baller, but again, I think St. Louis, or Georgia, excuse me, I think Georgia's just a little bit overvalued here, so I got St. Louis taking down Georgia in that 8-9 matchup. We got Texas Tech in that 12-5 game. Akron's a dangerous team. Akron can make some noise against Texas Tech, but I think they got just enough to edge by them, so I have them and Bama in the round of 32, and I do have Bama taking down Texas Tech, just because of that lack of JT Toppin that they have. I don't think they're going to be able to overcome not having JT Toppin. I do have Virginia taking down Tennessee in the round of 32. As much as it pains me to do that, I've watched this Tennessee team enough of my life to know that probably not getting by that Virginia team in that second round. We probably got enough to get by that SMU or Miami, Ohio team, but I don't think we have enough to get by that Virginia team there. Then I got Kentucky and Iowa State matching up in the round of 32, and again, I just think this Kentucky team, I was so high on this Kentucky team to start out the year, and they just never seem to get it. They just never got it in gear. Of course, season's not over. They have at least one more game to get it done, but that spread against Santa Clara is under 5 points as of time of making this video. That's a less than 5 point spread. So that's not a gimme game against Santa Clara. That's a 7-10 game. I can easily see that happening. So yeah, I got them in the round of 32, but I don't have Kentucky going any further than that. I do have Iowa State as my pick to make it out of this region. As far as a dark horse goes to make it out of this region, it's not much of a dark horse if they're the 3 seed, but I can easily see Virginia getting to the Final Four here out of this Midwest region. This is another region that's loaded and very strong, and again, this bottom half of this Midwest region is a brutal run for whoever makes it out. If it's not Iowa State, because Iowa State's the 2 seed down here, but if again Virginia would have to as much as I hate on Tennessee, and again, of course, I'm a Tennessee fan, so I'm critical of this, but it's a tough team. This is not a gimme game for Virginia, even though it's a 3-6 matchup. This is going to be a low spread. I could see Tennessee being a slight 1.5 to 2.5 point favorite in this game. I think Tennessee's a little undervalued at the 6 line. I think Tennessee, they're about 16th total in KenPom. As far as just like adjusted efficiencies and everything like that goes, overall KenPom, they're 16th. And then they're the 21st overall seed, given they're that first 6 seed. So I think Tennessee's a touch undervalued here. So I think it's a tough draw for both teams. It's a tough draw for Tennessee, and it's a tough draw for Virginia, because you're playing a little bit stronger of a 6 seed. But either way, whoever makes it out of this region is going to go through a gauntlet, whether that be Michigan having to play Bama or Texas Tech, or whether that be Iowa State having to play Virginia or Michigan. Yeah, this is a very strong region. Like I said, I got Iowa State making it out of this region. I really like this Iowa State team. They're hot. Stay hot, Iowa State. Get my bracket some points in these bracket challenges. But yeah, as far as that goes, I got Iowa State making it out of this region. All right, so half the bracket down. 2 more regions to go here. If you don't notice, I do look a little bit different. We are recording the rest of this on Tuesday, March 17th. So as of right now, games start in a few hours. It's currently 5:44. So our first play-in game of the 2026 tournament starts here in just a few hours. So that will be underway here soon. But for the West region, this region is honestly probably the weakest one in my opinion. It's got the strongest team, I think, in Arizona. You'll see. We'll talk more about Arizona later. I have Arizona going rather far here. Spoiler alert. We'll get to my national championship pick here in a second, but I'm going to let you know Arizona is my national title pick for this tournament. So, little spoiler there. But outside of Arizona, this is probably the weakest region, in my opinion, is the West here. And typically the West is the weaker region. This first round of 8 games only has 2 spreads that are under double digits. The only games that have single digit spreads is going to be Miami and Missouri, and Villanova and Utah State. It's going to be Miami's a 2.5 point favorite over Missouri, and then Utah State is a slight 1.5 point favorite. These are by DraftKings odds. So that's where I'm getting those numbers from, give or take a few points depending on where you look at. But as far as DraftKings go, only 2 of these games have single digit spreads. So your 1 seed, let's go through your seeds. So your 1 seeds here, Arizona, 2 seeds, Purdue. Then you got 3, Gonzaga, Arkansas at 4, Wisconsin at 5, then BYU at 6. Only notable upsets here. I do have 2 upsets happening in this region. I have number 13, Hawaii, taking down number 4, Arkansas. And that's just because, like I said earlier, I do really enjoy taking these high-level teams that did really well in their conference tournaments. I like to pick against them in the tournament. Typically, in Arkansas did go on and win the SEC tournament title. So, good news for Arkansas there for winning their first tournament title under Calipari. But bad news is you're going to have a first-round exit against Hawaii. That's a 15.5 point spread over on FanDuel. Hawaii, the Rainbow Warriors, are plus 800 on the money line. So we'll have some of my own coin on that. We'll see how that goes. Another upset I have is actually this first play-in game. I have Texas taking down NC State in the first 4, and then I have them taking down BYU just because I think Texas is a really talented team, and I think BYU's still reeling a little bit from that loss of their guard. I think Texas has enough to take down BYU here, and like I said, I think the tournament's going to be chalky this year, but again, it's March Madness. You got to throw a couple upsets in there just so you don't look stupid. So I do have Texas going there. I do have them dropping the next game to Gonzaga in the round of 32. But yeah, other than that, like I said, I have a couple first round upsets in here, but other than that, I don't have any of these teams making it past the round of 32. Like I have Hawaii taking down Arkansas, but then I have them losing to Wisconsin in the round of 32. And then, like I said, of course, I have Arizona making it out of this region. If I had to pick a dark horse here, I would probably go with Gonzaga, just because I do think Purdue's very overvalued. I think this Purdue team is nowhere near what expectations were at the beginning of the season. Preseason number one, if they're a 2 seed, but they're the last 2 seed. So it could have very easily been a 3 seed if it wasn't for Michigan State going down to UCLA earlier in the Big Ten tournament. I think Michigan State would have held on to that 2 seed, but they did drop that game to UCLA. So Purdue kind of somersaulted over them for that last 2 seed spot. We've already explained that for the difference between 2 and a 3. Like I said, I would rather be in Michigan State's position here than Purdue's position, because I would rather play UConn than Gonzaga right now. And then I would much rather have Duke as my 1 seed than Arizona. But yeah, other than that, this region, pretty straightforward. Like I said, my Sweet 16 for this region is Arizona, Wisconsin, Gonzaga, Purdue. Then I have Gonzaga taking down Purdue, and I have Arizona taking down Wisconsin. Then I have Arizona taking down Gonzaga in the Elite Eight. Other than that, not much to say about this region. There's a lot of talk about Long Island potentially being able to take down Arizona. That'd be really cool to see, another 16 taking down a 1, but I think your days of 16s taking down 1s is long gone. I don't see it happening again, but of course, nobody saw Purdue losing to Fairleigh Dickinson a couple years ago, so you never know, but I don't think I'm ever going to have a predicted 16 taking down a 1 in any of my brackets. So, yeah, that's kind of really all I have to say about the West. I mean, the West is a interesting region. It's just weak. I mean, in my opinion, I think it's weak. I think there's some good teams. I think Arkansas is really good. I think Arizona is really good. I think Gonzaga is really good. But like I said, I think there's some overvalued teams in here. I think Wisconsin's a touch overvalued. Like I said, I think Purdue's heavily overvalued. But yeah, I don't see anybody in this region really stacking up to what Arizona's got right now, and that's why I have Arizona coming out of this region. So yeah, let's get into our last region. Let's go down to the South region. This region is interesting to me. I like this region just because you do have your weakest 1 seed, in my opinion, in this region, and in my opinion, your strongest 2 seed. So this region will be interesting. I do have a couple upsets in this region as well. So let's go through our matchups. Obviously, you have your Florida as your 1 seed against that 16. That's one of those play-in 1 seed or 16 seed games. So it's Prairie View, A&M, and then Lehigh. Lehigh has some tournament experience, so I'm not going to make any picks on that just because it doesn't really matter who wins. If I had to go with a team, I'd probably pick Lehigh. Then your 8-9s, Clemson as your 8, Iowa as your 9. Then you got Vandy McNeese as your 12-5. McNeese was able to take down Clemson in this exact same matchup last year, 12-5. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I actually do have McNeese taking them down. I really like this McNeese team. This Vandy team is another team that did really well in their conference tournament. So that's another indicator for me that I look for. Then you got Nebraska-Troy. This is another game with a little steam behind it, upset-wise. But I got Nebraska winning this game. Then this is the most interesting first-round matchup to me, is going to be North Carolina versus VCU. VCU is a team that scared me going into the tournament. With Tennessee being projected where they were as a 6 seed, we were projected to play VCU in several brackets leading up to the tournament. We ended up just not being put with them, but North Carolina did get put with them. I think VCU is the strongest 11 seed here. I think VCU is better than a lot of the seeds ahead of them too. This spread's only 1.5 towards North Carolina. This spread's moved down from 3.5 to 1.5 when it opened. So this is again, at the time of recording, according to DraftKings, 1.5 point favorite for North Carolina. I do have North Carolina dropping this game to VCU. and I wouldn't consider this an upset given the size of the point spread. I think this North Carolina team without Caleb Wilson has a lot of holes and it's very gettable. So I do have North Carolina going down in the first round here, and I would love to see this because I don't like North Carolina. Then you got Illinois and Penn as your 3-14. These Ivy League teams, they have a rich history of upsetting these teams in the tournament. If y'all remember Princeton a few years ago taking down Arizona as a 2 seed, that was one of the most fun games to watch in my experience in watching the tournament. That was one of my favorite games. But yeah, I don't have Penn winning this game, but these Ivies, man, I don't want to play them in March. They're scary. We got St. Mary's and A&M. This is another game that I find really interesting. St. Mary's is a 3.5 point favorite. This line stayed the same. This line hasn't moved a bit. I have A&M in this just because I feel like the SEC is stronger. I feel like the Big East, or not the Big East, I mean, they play with Gonzaga over there in the West. So I think those teams, I think that conference is just a touch overvalued usually just because they're historically a little better. Them in the Big East, I feel like those two conferences are touch overvalued every year. Those teams are. St. Mary's is one of those teams that just is always there but doesn't really make much noise in the tournament. So yeah, A&M, battle-tested team, first-year head coach. I think they are going to go in there with something to prove, and I think they're going to be able to get this game done. So I do have A&M taking down St. Mary's. Then your 2-15 is going to be Houston and Idaho. I have Houston rolling in this game. They're a 19.5 point favorite. I don't see them dropping this first round. Yeah, that's kind of it as far as the first round goes. I will have a separate video on VCU and North Carolina, just because, like I said, that's my most intriguing first round matchup. I'm going to be watching that the day it happens. So yeah, that will be very interesting. I'll have my eyes glued to that, as well as 3 other TVs as well. We got a whole setup when it comes to this tournament, so we'll have videos for you all week on these, and then stay tuned. I will have a video on North Carolina VCU coming up because, again, not to reiterate, but really like that game. As far as second round goes, round of 32, I don't have really anything interesting. I have the top 4 seeds rolling. I have 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the Elite 8 in this region. Just because I do think these top 4 seeds are pretty strong. Illinois, I think, very easily could have been a 2 seed, and then Nebraska, I think, again, they were on the 1 and the 2 line, depending on what time of the season you looked at projection. So I think this Nebraska team is very strong. Then I do have Houston and Florida advancing to the Elite 8 out of this region, and then I do have Houston going to the Final Four out of this region. If I had to pick a team that I think could make it to the Final Four out of this region that isn't Houston, I'd probably go with Illinois, just because I think this Illinois team is really, really good. I don't think this is a fluke Illinois team. This team is just really good at basketball. So yeah, I really like that Illinois team. But again, I got Houston coming out. But if I were to be surprised, I wouldn't be surprised if Illinois was able to come out of this region. That kind of wraps it up for the South region. We didn't fully get to the Final Four. I mean, if you've been paying attention, you've been able to piece together my Final Four. It's Michigan, Houston, Arizona, Iowa State, and then I have Houston and Arizona playing in the national title game. And then, like I said earlier, I do have Arizona taking that game and winning the 2026 NCAA Tournament. So in my bracket, the Arizona Wildcats are your 2026 national champs. Yeah, this is going to be a fun tournament. A lot of first round matchups that I'm looking forward to. Like I said earlier, North Carolina VCU, we got Kentucky Santa Clara, Georgia St. Louis, Missouri and Miami, Louisville, South Florida. Let's see, what's some, like Arkansas, Hawaii. That'll be. I'm really interested to see how this. Last year, this philosophy played out well with teams that performed well in their conference titles, and then teams that didn't perform well. It seemed to correlate. So I'm interested to see if that trend stays this year. But yeah, that kind of wraps it up for the video. I appreciate you guys sticking around. This is not as long of a video as I normally do. The last video I put out was really long, so I tried to make this one a little bit shorter and more palatable for you guys. But yeah, like I said, TikTok, Twitter, go follow on there. I'll probably have a lot of TikToks going out this week, just about team dark horse teams that can win, things like that, stuff everybody posts. But I'll have some stuff over there for y'all to watch. And yeah, I appreciate you guys watching. See ya.